Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me fine? I hope you had a great time with Shannon this morning. Now it's my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Janiece Williams. I first met Janiece a few years ago at SoCal NOMA summer camp. I saw this young woman who was teaching these middle schoolers and high schoolers about architecture, and her enthusiasm was so infectious that it kind of brought me in, and I've been actually volunteering there for the last 7 years. Her passion was so palpable, and it left a lasting impression on me. Recently, Janiece had channeled the same enthusiasm into a new chapter of her life. She is now the co-founder and an executive director of LeaderFlow, a nonprofit organization dedicated to accelerating the pipeline to leadership for professionals of color in architecture, engineering, and construction industry. Janiece has a strong desire to shape the experience of developing professionals as they navigate through our industry. This commitment was nurtured through her ongoing involvement with NOMA and her past leadership on the executive board for SoCal chapter. During her tenure, she played an integral role in launching the SoCal NOMA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Challenge in 2020. This initiative was first structured DEI in the architecture industry, aiming to address the long-standing lack of diverse representation. Janiece believes to attract and retain the top talent, we must place greater emphasis on creating inclusive work environments. These environments should encourage diverse career paths and invest in well-rounded personal and professional development for individuals at various stages of their careers. After participating in the pilot program in Los Angeles, she recognized the immense value of helping others prioritize their personal growth, ultimately cultivating a new generation of inclusivity, impactful AEC leaders. Today, LeaderFlow not only operates in Los Angeles, but Seattle and Houston, and also has plans to expand nationally. I personally know a few individuals in this room who have benefited from this, and I'm so excited to welcome Janiece on stage. Let us give a warm welcome to Janiece Williams.
All right, good morning. All right, let's see if I can get this going here. Okay, we're up there. Hi. I'm going to go back and forth between the microphone. It's just kind of my natural, flow. So just work with me here. I'm just so honored and pleased to be in front of you. I want to thank John B. for such a warm introduction. Thank you to Meg Coffey and all of the AWA+D Executive Committee for just welcoming me into your space today to share a little bit about my personal story and my personal interest in really showing up in this space of partnership with you all. I'm going to follow the rules. Okay, I got it. I know. Okay, thank you. Keith has been helping me out this morning. All right, so I wanted to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a native Houstonian, grew up, born and raised in 3rd Ward, Houston, Texas. This is something that is really core to who I am as a person, to my foundation. It is a historically Black neighborhood that has really been put on the map for a few different reasons. If some of you may not have known, there's a small pop artist by the name of Beyonce who was born in 3rd Ward, actually right down the street from my family, and attended a lot of the same churches and community events as my family did as well. For some other really kind of saddening reasons, too, this is also the neighborhood that George Floyd was born in. He was raised in as well. So I say that to say there's so much that has taken place in my community that has really instilled in me the values of how I want to show up in this world, the impact that I want to have on others, and exactly just reminding ourselves of our why. Why we're here in this room, why we do what we do, and the impact that we want to have on our industry. So I didn't really grow up with this idea that I wanted to be an architect. I actually went to a high school that was for the health professions. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I'm not really sure why, but, not really sure what all of the options were for me. I just figured I'd try something. I wanted to help people. And I realized along the way that, I probably wasn't really cut out for it, but kind of going back to that community idea, it really helped me understand that maybe there's another way that I can impact my community. It could be something coupled with the built environment. How can I change what it is that we're seeing so that we can really create some more long-lasting impact? And so my sister, she's in construction management, older sister who's much shorter than me, but she really wears some big shoes on those construction sites. And I was inspired by what she was doing. And she kind of introduced this idea of architecture to me. And I said, all right, I'm going to try it out. We're just going to see how this goes. And if it works, great. If not, then that's okay. I'll try something else. So I applied to Howard University, a historically black college and university. I knew I always wanted to go to an HBCU. Both of my parents attended HBCUs, and there was something about that community that I felt like would really help me get across that finish line, which is what I discovered in architecture. And so, as I'm sure many of you can probably relate, kind of entering architecture can be a bit intimidating. And I remember sitting in that freshman studio with my professor saying, look to your left, look to your right. You're probably not going to be crossing the finish line or graduating across that stage with the person sitting next to you. And I was like, what am I doing? But I was committed. I was committed to trying something, pushing myself out of my comfort zone, and then recognizing that we could do it with the help of each other. And so those crazy folks jumping up because we were just super excited to be getting that degree and actually making it across that finish line was super important to me. So I finished in 2010. As many of you know, some of you may not. I'm seeing some of the younger generation in the room. There was a lot of challenges with getting a job out of school. So I moved back to Houston. 2 years, I was struggling, trying to figure out what am I going to do next. And I took a leap of faith. I said, well, let me just try something new. And my best friend had moved out to LA, and she said, what are you doing? Like, come on, let's just try this out. We do this. This is what we do. So I packed up my little Honda Civic, and I got on the road and didn't have a job lined up, but I said, hey, let's just see what happens. And I came to LA. I started working for a couple of small firms out here, worked on some pretty big projects, was just diving right in, rolling up my sleeves to try to learn and absorb as much as I could. But I noticed that along the way, I was really trying to find my place in this industry. Where did I feel like I belonged? Where did I feel like I could add value? And where did I feel like I could really show up to support not only myself, but feel like I can still kind of tap into that impact? So I realized along the way that this was really it for me. The way that I could lean in and the way that I needed to really establish myself in a new city where I didn't know many people was seeking out that community. And it was through the organization NOMA, National Organization of Minority Architects. I spent a lot of time working with that Project Pipeline Summer Camp. I was super excited to be working with youth and to see how can we now expose this opportunity to diverse youth across our communities. And I was good with staying in the background. I was good with being a volunteer. I was saying, I don't really need to have the leadership roles. I don't really need to show up. I just want to make sure that my contributions will help. And I also realized that I was kind of holding myself back a little bit. And it was through that community, it was through those people at NOMA who really championed for my growth, who was pushing me out of my comfort zone to say, we want to hear from you. We want to see more of you. We need your involvement. We need your leadership. We need your vision. And I really ran for an executive board position, kind of got forced into running for one, but I'm so glad that I did because I really recognized that it was something that I needed personally in order to really show up and really measure up to the capacity that I knew that I could offer. So I spent 4 years on the board. As you see in the time frames there was a lot of change that was happening, not only in our community, but also around the country. And at that point, in that transition, there was so much taking place that we had the spotlight on us. We had to really figure out how are we going to show up, how are we going to respond to this attention that we were receiving, quite honestly, for the first time in a very long time. So I was glad. I was glad that we worked together, that we really pushed forward through all of the challenges, through that attention to figure out how can we take advantage of this opportunity and really propel us into the next generation of leadership for SoCal NOMA. This is a little bit about my life now, which I'll circle back around to tell you more about LeaderFlow, this nonprofit organization that I co-founded. But in the spirit of community, I realized that as I reflect over my life now, community has been the constant theme for me. It's seeking community, it's building partnership, and now the work that I've committed to doing full time is enhancing those communities in different cities with professionals who are trying to grow, who are trying to see more of themselves in the spaces and advancing to leadership so that we can really be the instrumental change that we need to see. So I'll come back around to tell you a little bit more about LeaderFlow, but I wanted to start off with the topic for today. When I think about advancing together through partnerships, the things that come to mind for me, especially because this is very personal to me and the work that I do now, I think about the words, the who, the what, the when, where, the why, and how are we going to do this, right? When I look at me, myself, the role that I'm in, what I've been responsible for, the continuous impact that I want to be a part of and that I want to be leading, I'm recognizing that this is a personal commitment. For you all to show up here today, I've been in your shoes. I've been that interested, really anxious and excited committee member to get involved, to help, to see where I can contribute. I've been that sacrificing and committed board member who's trying to juggle all the things and still push our organizations forward. And now, as I'm running and leading a small startup nonprofit, I'm recognizing the need for our support, for our help, to lean in to help each other. And this is the time we need it more than ever right now. So my intention from my time with you here today is really to help set the stage for what I know is going to be a super thought-provoking, engaging, enlightening conversation and workshop for you all. So where do we start? Recognizing the importance of partnerships. It's not difficult. We know we need the help, right? We're all wearing all the hats. We're all tired. We all juggling so much, personal, professional. But it's understanding how are we going about building those partnerships and sustaining those partnerships. That's the critical piece of this. We know that this takes time. It takes an investment, right? We all want to do the work of our organizations. We want to propel our mission forward. We want to think about those initiatives, those activities, and how can we keep doing it and expanding our outreach to the community. But if we can manage it well, that'll help us really achieve our goals more effectively. And then a partnership is strategic when it provides us with those means and methods for advancing our mission. You all are doing amazing work. And being around for 100 years is incredible. Not many organizations in our space can say that. So how can we continue to lean in to not only provide you all with the support to keep your mission going for the next 100 years, but also look for those other organizations that are aligned with you in your mission, in your purpose, and in your vision. So I wanted to start by reflecting on your strategic plan. There's so much work that went into this. And from my conversations with Meg and John B. to try to understand exactly the direction and the vision for this symposium, recognizing that these core values, we have to remind ourselves of this. This is our North Star. And so I know with A3K Consulting, working with you all for your workshop today, you all will be diving so much more into this and understanding this. But for the purposes of today, I wanted to highlight two of those values that are super important in ways that I know with my organization we can partner and contribute together. The leadership and growth. Leadership, empowering women to be confident and effective leaders through programming and professional development. And growth, that purposeful advancement, right, of your organization. You want to be the preferred source of support. That's incredible. So where do we start with that? I like to start with thinking about what makes us who we are. What makes your organization so unique? Take a second to think about these questions. What brought you here today? What initially attracted you to this organization? How would you describe these characteristics? And what impact has it had on you? We've heard a little bit about that in our great icebreaker this morning. If we take time to think about these things, we think about the power of storytelling. Storytelling is really what enhances our value. It enhances letting people know in our outreach internally and externally why we're here, why we exist, and how can we get their buy-in to help us move forward. Starting with growth. If we look at growth, I'm highlighting the top 3 challenges that we face. In my mind, as I'm thinking about my own growth with my organization, and some of these things that can be recurring for us over time, or just stand out right now because of our current circumstances. The things that come up for me are limited funding sources. We know how small our industry is. Our companies are being tapped by the same people asking for money to help us do what we know we need to do to propel our industry forward. That operational capacity, that's probably even more personally something that I want to emphasize, because we've been in those positions where we're wearing all of these hats. We're stretched. We're trying to protect ourselves in that process. And then increasing and enhancing our member and volunteer engagement. Leaning in more. How can we say yes, right? But when we look at these challenges, I like to try to also view them in the spirit and in the vision of our opportunities. Where can we remind ourselves the opportunities that can really help propel us through these challenges to make sure that we're taking advantage of what's in front of us? So starting with that first one, limited funding resources. Like we said, small pool of sponsors, right? We know that we need to expand that. Some partnerships as an opportunity can really help expand access to diverse funding sources. Maybe there's a way that we can share our resources in that. Even as nonprofit organizations, whether you're a 501c3 like my organization or a C6 like yours, have we been able to tap into grant opportunities? Can we increase our networks and enhance our reputation and credibility through those grant-making opportunities? Donor retention. How well are we doing with our donors? How much are we actually tapping in and measuring our success and our growth through the donors who are showing up to help support us in our efforts? All opportunities for growth here. That operational capacity. How many of us are working full-time jobs and we're doing this on the side, right? We're stretched. There's so much that we're trying to do. We need to fill these roles to really help to push us forward. How much can our partnerships help broaden our knowledge, our skill sets, our experience pool? I know there's so much that I can learn from this organization, from your leadership, from your vision, from your experience, that's going to help me spark some innovation. What can I pour into you with the things that I'm learning through our program, through the engagement with our members, through the engagement with our participants? How can we combat some of these inefficiencies in our process? When we're thinking about handing off our leadership to the next generation of leadership, what operating procedures are we putting in place that we can give them the tools that they need to be successful and carry out our mission in the next generation, in the next 100 years? Where are there some opportunities and partnerships where we can provide, or at least have opportunities where we can get our sponsors to provide more in-kind donations? I know that for a fact, sponsoring firms, they want to figure out how can they be of more contribution besides just giving us the money. Where can we lean in on that? Our member and volunteer engagement. We know what this means. We know how much it takes for us to show up today on a Saturday morning, right? What are our sacrifices? What are we missing out of to be here today? But that why, that organizational uniqueness, what's keeping you here? What we want to make sure is that we can continue to express that value to those who we want to become a part of this organization so that we can prevent the high turnover, the lack of availability, most importantly, the burnout. All of these buzzwords that we know are super, super important to how we're showing up, the space that we're in, and how can we move past that and grow through it so that we can really be effective. So how do we do this? Assessing that organizational readiness. How ready are we really to partner? We have to start with identifying those needs, right? What are our specific needs? Being very clear with that. Being an entrepreneur is sometimes hard because we're thinking about it all, we're juggling it all, and we need everything. But how can we hone in and prioritize those needs and those offers? Assigning your stakeholders. We know that many of you in this room are super committed to this work, You've probably been doing it and maybe being called in other spaces that are mission aligned. Many of us who are here are doing million and one other things. We care about it, but we know that we need some really valuable and invested stakeholders to propel us forward. Research and evaluate those potential partners. What are the other organizations doing out here? How many other opportunities can we do to partner together to do some joint activities, some joint events? How can we share in that mission? We have to be really intentional of our follow-through with that outreach. How are we building those relationships? How are we understanding the needs of other organizations as well as communicating ours effectively? And securing that partnership agreement. It's setting the stage for what we know can stand the test of time. If we start somewhere with being intentional and committed to what that partnership agreement is like, as soon as we're ready to welcome that next generation of leaders to carry our mission forward, that can also carry across as well. When we think of leadership, another important value for this organization, of course, I wouldn't be here if I didn't plug LeaderFlow. So I want to tell you a little bit about this organization and what I envision as a way to support your mission as an organization and reaching out to provide a platform for leadership development training in the AEC industry. So when we think about this idea of filling the pipeline, there's been so many different programs. I've been at the helm of them, trying to think about the entry to this pipeline. What is really our issue with diversity in the architecture and the design industry? How can we create opportunities to expose diverse youth to this program? Then we think about what's at the end of the pipeline. We're coming in the pipeline and we're getting on websites and we're not seeing the diversity that's representing the actual people that we're trying to attract to be in our industry. How can we deal with that? We have to ask ourselves, what's going on in this pipeline? All of these efforts that we're putting forward at the entry is causing some issues that are not yielding the results that we need to see. We start looking at things like implicit bias, difficulty making connections, trying to bridge the gap and understanding what are the experiences of others. Tokenism. We're seeing this in real time, being the only one in the room, and how can we put you forward in front of project opportunities, but not really give you the opportunities to advance in leadership. Misunderstood cultural differences. It's a challenge. We are all learning from one another, but how can we create more understanding about what our backgrounds are, what our lived experiences are through our cultures? That's what makes us who we are. Lack of access to mentors and sponsors. It's a challenge building those bridges and connections. So the idea is we really need a more flowing pipeline. How can we really support those who are in our pipeline, in our industry, to give them access and tools and resources so that they can earn their positions of leadership? And that's really the idea behind LeaderFlow. So where we started, it was a pilot program that started in 2021. This was a partnership between SoCal NOMA and KPFF engineers. And so my co-founder, John Gavin, who's the CEO of KPFF, he was in a position like many other industry leaders at the height of all of the social unrest in our country, being asked, what are you going to do as a CEO? What are you going to respond to? And it was a challenge for him because he said, I don't want to just put out a statement. I don't want to put up an Instagram post. What can we do to actually support people of color in our industry? So he had the idea to take this pilot program and model it after a leadership development program that he had internal to KPFF engineers. Something that had worked really well for him as they had been working on increasing their gender equity in their organization. So he brought it to our board. We were all go for it. KPFF sponsored the whole thing, and it really propelled me to apply. I was in leadership. I had been looking for these mentorship opportunities, looking for some training outside of just my day-to-day project-related tasks, and said, how can I be growing as a person, as an individual, and how can those skill sets help me build the confidence that I need to show up in the workplace and hopefully be recognized for my leadership capabilities? So I went through the program. That was us as the pilot cohort on the left. It was a really valuable experience. And when I was going through my own personal transition, I moved back to Houston, my hometown. I was looking for what was going to be my next chapter. And after the program wrapped, we had a lot of energy, like, what can we do with this? Where can this go? And we knew that we would have limited resources with trying to maintain this in SoCal NOMA. So in my own personal quest, I decided to pivot and pursue this full time. So we launched LeaderFlow in January of 2022. We're just trying to build out what could be the template for this. We ran the second year of our program with a brand new cohort of AEC professionals in Los Angeles, and we felt like there was something to this formula that we could continue to pour into and figure out how can we grow it. So we had to think about what our mission was. We were focused on accelerating this pipeline to leadership for professionals of color in the AEC industry, helping to build the confidence, helping for them to feel empowered, helping for them to take advantage of the opportunities that could be presented to them. And now when I reflect on my fellow cohort participants, the relationships that we built through our experience together were really, really meaningful. We got to know each other on a deeper level. The things that we didn't feel safe enough to talk about in the office, we talked about in our program, in our cohort. And now I'm seeing them thrive. Matthew Trotter, incoming president for SoCal NOMA. Chris Locke has started his own design company. Rachel Bascombe, she's doing amazing things in leadership through architecture as well as running her own business. Super proud to see where they're going and see how LeaderFlow has helped commit to their process and their progress in our industry. So these core values, had to really think about what are we trying to accomplish with the experience that we're creating through our program. It's really rooted in empowerment, promoting these opportunities for people of color, building those authentic relationships so that we could gain ample support and mutual respect. And hopefully, by planting the seed for creating a space like this, we can transform workplace culture to have a more equitable industry. So in 2023, I was able to go full-time as the executive director. We expanded to Seattle and Houston. It was an amazing experience and a lot of work. But I'm super grateful to be able to build some connections with other professionals of color in this industry who are looking to make a change and looking to grow and help propel them into the next stage of their careers. So a few highlights of our organization. We've had 61 total to date. We're in the middle of our 2024 program, and by the end of this year, we would have had 104 cohort participants complete our program. Our program started out as a partnership with SoCal NOMA, so we were really heavily architecture focused, but our intention was to make it more AEC balanced, which we're slowly working towards. And then seeing the representation from ethnically diverse backgrounds has been super instrumental and super impactful to the experience that we've been able to create. Some inspiring partnerships. We've been working locally to try to gain some exposure, to gain some support from some of these organizations. And of course, I had to add AWA+D there because this is an inspiring partnership. When I also think about partnerships, I think about the sponsors. Some of these same firms were shown on your slides as well. Where can we increase opportunity here with our sponsors? So in order for us to really think about how can we take advantage of these opportunities, this is another way that we can do so. We're currently in our 2024 program. We're about halfway through. I just actually ended up facilitating our last session for Los Angeles on emotional intelligence yesterday. But just seeing more people who are interested in learning from us, who are interested in experiencing this cohort and this psychological safety that we've been able to create through our program has been super exciting and super inspirational. So to tell you a little bit more about what we do, we offer a program to about 12 to 15 professionals of color. We like to target the mid-career range, those who at least have been in our industry for a minimum of 5 years. We're thinking this is a gap area. There are those who've been in this industry who are looking for other opportunities of support. How can we be growing and empowering them through that range? What I'm also noticing is that there's so many more who've been well beyond that experience range who are still looking for opportunities to keep propelling themselves, to keep growing and investing in themselves. So we don't just cap it off at 15. We've had some in our program who've been 20, 25, almost 30 years of experience, and I'm seeing the need for this. And most importantly, all of our fundraising efforts are made available so that we can provide this at no cost to the participants, trying to remove some of those barriers from their involvement and their participation. Some of the key aspects of our program, it's rooted in building those relationships, inviting everyone to the table to understand what have been the challenges of people of color in our industry. How can we build some of those connections by inviting them to share their leadership skills, what do they have to offer, and making sure that we can address some of these systemic issues that have plagued our industry through opening up and being vulnerable, being humble, and also thinking about how can we work through this with a growth mindset. So we offer 7 sessions over the course of the year. This is one Friday a month where we ask our participants to be with us for a full day. The way that I like to think about our program is broken down into 3 phases. The first 2 sessions are focused on who you are, what's important to you, how do you get to know yourself better, what is it to develop a growth mindset, what are your strengths, how can you speak to those strengths. Total leadership and work-life integration, thinking about all of these areas of our lives that are important to us. How do we find alignment in those areas? By spending time getting to know yourself better, it helps you be able to share yourself with those in the room that you're with in the professional setting and in your personal setting. You spend a little bit of time on yourself, and then you start to think about how are you interacting with others through emotional intelligence, crucial conversations, the things that don't come as naturally to us, but we need coaching on. And then we look at the last sort of phase of our program that's focused more on the business of AEC. How are we working through our relationships with our clients as we're ascending in the project leadership ladder? We are exploring the financial aspects of our practice, understanding the business side of our industry, what's informing architecture and engineering firms, service-based firms versus construction companies. How can we create more understanding across the table so that we can work more effectively together? And then lastly, firm and practice leadership, which is helping our cohorts develop their own leadership philosophy. What's gonna be their foundation? What's gonna be something that they can share with anyone they interact with to know, this is what I'm committed to, this is what I'm looking forward to in terms of my own personal growth, and I also wanna share this with you to help learn a little bit more about your journey and your personal growth and how we can work together to propel to leadership. Some of our facilitators, these are industry leaders across the board who have been committed to pouring into this experience, sharing their stories, helping to coach and mentor our professionals to say, this is what we're looking forward to in terms of building a community. So we're inviting everyone from all backgrounds to share, to be at the table, to have these conversations, to learn from one another. And through that process, what we've been noticing with our results, with our cohorts, are having some stronger relationships, seeing those relationships continue outside of our program, staying in touch with one another, people feeling more capable, building that higher confidence, working towards a more inclusive and representative culture, and an overall stronger performance. And so to date, we've been operating in LA, Seattle, and Houston. And with all of the hard work and wearing all the hats, we are looking forward to expanding our operational capacity and our partnerships so that we can expand to Chicago and New York in the fall. So where can we take this? We're really looking at numbers up here on the screen, but really this is about creating an experience and an opportunity for people to learn more about themselves and change the course of leadership and what the experience of leadership in our firms looks like. How can we support this next generation? How can we change some of the behaviors? How can we be more mindful of what it is that we need to stay focused on to keep our industry moving forward? Our desired end game is really rooted in knowing yourself so that you can be you more. Recognizing your opportunity, building your own business within your business, and making sure that you can add value in whatever space that you're in. So, if you're interested in learning more about the organization, how to get involved, I would love to share my information with you. One, we are always in need of sponsorships. Our facilitators, if you're interested in sharing your experience, your expertise with our cohorts, we invite you to be in the space with us. We always need host locations, and in order to get and fill these cohorts, we need you all to identify interested participants to apply for our program. So when I think about how can we partner together, so many opportunities to learn from each other. What does our knowledge and expertise sharing look like? There's so much that I know that I can learn from you all as an organization that's been around for 100 years now, and I know that there's so much that I'm learning from the experience participating with our cohorts and learning from them about how we can push our industry forward. Joint programming. I know many of you are already doing that in some of your allied organizations now, but how we can support that, how I can show up and build my team around providing facilitation and workshops for your members. Advocacy and cross-promotion. I know this is an LA-based organization, but there is so much support that can span across other cities to know what it is that you've created here with your intimacy, with your connection, with your long-standing support for one another. And resource sharing. So just to kind of drill this down and some next steps to take, I just want to reorient us around assessing your organizational readiness. How ready are you as an organization to partner? And being super specific with your needs and what you can offer. It's something that I've had to personally reflect on as I am invited to share in this space with you, something that I'm trying to personally grow with so that I can be super committed to knowing what those needs are and communicating those needs to a new space in front of whatever audience I'm in. And reminding yourself of your why. Going back to these questions, what brought you here today? What initially attracted you to this organization? How would you describe those characteristics? And what impact has AWA+D had on you? In order to remind us of our why, we want to propel us forward together. And with that, I thank you for your time and for listening to me this morning.